The NBA season is over, which means that we have to update our rankings. I recently wrote a book that includes the 50 greatest teams, the 50 greatest playoff runs by a player, the 50 greatest playoff moments, and the 100 greatest players of all time. And the link is in the description box for you to purchase your copy today. But the book wasn't written in stone. Rankings change every year. The current players can add to their legacies, and sometimes they take a few steps back. So that's what we're going to do here. But just a quick note before we get started with that. At the beginning of the chapter where I start ranking the 100 greatest players of all time, I compared that particular ranking to a club that only the biggest stars would attend. So imagine you see a VIP table in the club, and you got Jay-Z, Kanye West, Kendrick Lamar, Beyonce, Usher, and then Mims is there with them. It's like, yeah, he had a good song, but he shouldn't be on that table. We all know who deserves to be within that company and who doesn't. That's why I decided to snub players like Mark Price and Paul Westphal in my top 100. I understand that we're talking about great players, but I don't know about putting them with the best of the best. So without further ado, let's open the club. And we're going to decide who can now enter that club of greatest players, who goes out, and if we have to do any changes to the rankings. Now this year has been a little quiet. There's not a lot of movement that will be going on. For example, we're not going to be adding any new teams to the 50 greatest teams of all time. The Phoenix Suns had the best odds of making that list before the postseason started, since they won 64 games. But one of my requirements for a team to make that list is that you had to at least reach the conference finals. They failed to do that, so they blew a rare opportunity to be known as one of the greatest teams in the history of the league. As far as the Golden State Warriors and the Boston Celtics, here's the thing. Their regular season records were pedestrian. The Warriors won 53 games and the Celtics won 51 games. That's not a sign of an all-time great team. That number is way too low. Now I'll admit, there are a few teams in my top 50 list that also won fewer than 60 games during the regular season. But the difference is that all of them dominated at a historic level in the postseason, which offset their struggles in the regular season. You think of teams like the 2001 Lakers, the 2016 Cavaliers, or the 1982 Lakers. In the case of the Warriors, their playoff record ended up being 16-6. You combine that with their 53-29 record, and I'm sorry, but that's not elite. That's not legendary. Their margin of victory in the playoffs was okay, and their overall talent level isn't exactly eye-opening either. So I don't think they did enough to make the top 50. The next category that we're going to talk about is the 50 greatest playoff runs by a player. The only player that could qualify is Steph Curry, and I think he should make the list. No question about it. Let's look at the playoff stats from Steph. I got his overall playoff per game numbers, his finals per game numbers, and his advanced metrics for the playoffs. So let me start by saying this. What he did for the first 3 rounds was pretty good, but it wasn't at the level that we're used to seeing from him. So going into the finals, I was unsure if he would make this list or not. But after what he did in the finals against the Celtics, there's no way that we can deny him entry. It was that good. As you saw on your screen, he averaged 31.2 points per game on 48% shooting, 6 rebounds per game, 5 assists per game, 2 steals per game, and he shot 44% from the 3. He averaged around 5.2 made 3-pointers per game for the series, which is the most by any player in finals history. His 31 made 3-pointers is second all time for the most 3-pointers made in a final series. He was only 1 3-pointer away from matching his own record in 2016 when he made 32 3-pointers for the series. Now let's talk about his final stat line. Here are the players in NBA history that have averaged at least 30 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists in the finals. Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kevin Durant, Hakeem Olajuwon, Jerry West, Julius Erving, and Giannis. So there haven't been 10 players in the history of the league that have been able to produce those numbers on the biggest stage. That alone requires us to give Curry the proper recognition for his legendary finals performance. That also includes his signature performance in the finals in Game 4 when he had 43 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 assists. So Curry is in. That shouldn't be a shocker. Now let's talk about his place among the 50 greatest playoff runs ever. I'm going to put this 2022 playoff run by Steph Curry at the 38th spot. So he replaces Kobe Bryant's playoff run in 2010. As far as the 50 greatest playoff moments, we're not adding Jason Tatum's buzzer beater against the Nets. And I don't think we should add Joel Embiid's buzzer beater against the Toronto Raptors. It was a great shot, especially when you consider that this is a 7-foot center making that shot to win the game. It was very impressive. You can say it kind of symbolizes the evolution of the big man. But I don't think it's going to be remembered as one of the greatest clutch moments of all time. It just didn't have much of an impact on their season, unfortunately. And we're also not going to add Trae Young's floater against the Heat to win Game 3 in the first round. So no new additions here. And now we get to the moment that we've all been waiting for. We get to the 100 greatest players of all time list. For this one, we got some major moves going on. Now remember, in my book, I got Robert Horry as the bouncer. I got a whole test named after him. He is my standard of greatness. He's the one that will either lift up the red velvet ropes or he will flash his 7 rings at you and tell you to get lost. So let's take a look at the guest list. We got Nikola Jokic standing in line with his 2 MVP trophies swagging out. So let me call up Big Shot Bob, since I'm the club manager, and tell him to let the Joker come on in. So this means that Sean Marion, you gotta go. Sorry, we're at full capacity here. You had a good run, your greatness has been overlooked, I wanted to pay ode to you, but you just can't compare to what the Joker has accomplished. The case for him making the list is pretty simple. He's one of 12 players to win back-to-back MVP awards, and he's also one of 15 players to win more than one MVP. That is a simplified version, but there's more to it. He's already the greatest all-around center to ever play the game. In just his 7th season, he ranks 7th all-time in career triple-doubles, and he's only 2 triple-doubles away from surpassing Wilt Chamberlain as the all-time leader among centers. We also need to account for the fact that he led the league this year in triple-doubles. Aside from the triple-doubles, there's also one interesting fact about the type of season that Jokic had last year. Let's look at what he averaged in the 2020/21 season. He averaged 26.4 points per game, 10.8 rebounds per game, and 8.3 assists per game. Do you know how many players in the history of the league have averaged at least 26 points, 10 rebounds, and 8 assists in a season? It's just 2 other players. According to StatHead, it's Oscar Robertson and Russell Westbrook. We're talking about 2 all-time great point guards, but now we're adding a center in the mix. Think about how crazy that is. So we can easily make the case that he's the best all-around player in the league, and he's already one of the greatest ever. Now let's talk about the records that Jokic was able to break this season. His 32.8 PER that he posted is currently the highest mark for a single season in NBA history, and his 13.7 box plus minus that he posted is also the highest mark ever. From an analytical standpoint, you can say that Jokic had one of the greatest seasons of all time. So it's a no-brainer to include him on the list. His resume is already pretty deep. As far as where he specifically ranks, I'm going to put him at the number 78 spot. So I have him right above Chris Webber and just below Klay Thompson and Tony Parker. I just have to see a little bit more playoff success before I put him in the top 75. He made the conference finals in 2020, and I recognize that making the conference finals is a pretty big deal. All that he's lacking is longevity, and he will obviously get that barring any serious injuries. But that's a pretty significant jump from a player that didn't even make the list when the book came out. Now there's this other guy in line, and he's been standing there for a while now. He's causing a ruckus. talking a big game. But I don't have many reasons to keep him waiting outside any longer. So Ori, take it. Let Draymond Green in. That means that Mo Cheeks, it's time for you to go. Now understand that your prime was better than Draymond's. I get it. In fact, if I ever do an all-time draft and Draymond Green and Mo Cheeks are on the board, I would probably pick Mo over Draymond. That's just me. But we're talking about 4 championships over Mo's 1 title. Draymond's accolades and his contribution to arguably, I said arguably, the most decorated franchise of the 21st century can't be overlooked any longer. Can't do it. So he's in. Now I'm going to put him in the 95th spot, right below Chris Bosh. Last but not least, we got Stephen Curry. In my book, I have Curry at the 13th spot. With a 4th title and now a Finals MVP on his resume, he surpasses Hakeem Olajuwon and Kevin Durant, the 2 players that were above him. The question now is he a top 10 player of all time? And I say, not yet. Let me oversimplify this. In my top 10, all of the players have at least 10 All-Star appearances and 10 All-NBA selections. Curry currently has 8 All-Star appearances and 8 All-NBA appearances. The guy that's sitting in my 10th spot, Tim Duncan, has 15 All-Star appearances and 15 All-NBA selections, nearly double of what Curry has. He also has 3 times more Finals MVPs and 1 more title. The disparity in the career numbers is too overwhelming at this point. Now, if impact on the league is a big factor in your top 10 list, then he should easily be in your top 10. I recognize that. In fact, I wrote in my book that pretty soon we won't be able to make a top 10 list without Curry's name on it. And I still believe that. I think it's just a matter of time. The time is just not now. For me at least. Give him just a little bit more longevity and I'll be more than happy to put him in. And now the club has properly been rearranged until next year. Thanks to those who have downloaded my book, who have purchased the paperback version. And also a special thanks to everybody who have supported my channel the last year or so. Till next time.